Before I begin talking, I would like you to help me by participating in an activity. So if you wouldn't mind, could I ask you to begin by standing up and everybody standing over in this side of the room facing this wall. So this is for everybody. Perfect. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to read you a story about a relationship, and as I read you the story, I would like you to listen really carefully to the story and walk towards me at the same time. Okay? So, I'm ready to begin. Imagine you are a single person and you must walk and listen at the same time. And you meet a fantastic, handsome new man, and he becomes your boyfriend. Yeah. For the boys in the room, you have to imagine. Okay. Yeah. The relationship is going really well. It's making fantastic progress. You are really getting on well, and you'll think that maybe it might end in marriage if you're very lucky. And you've never felt as good as this before. You're on top of the world, and there are no hurdles. You are making the best progress ever. Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. Now, can you all sort of make a rough note of roughly where you're standing? Okay, okay. And now, can you come back to this side of the room and do the same thing? So, stand at that side of the room and face me the other side. Okay, so same thing, I'm going to read you a story, maybe a little bit different story, and I'm going to ask you to walk towards me and listen to the story at the same time. Okay, so imagine again that you are single and you meet a fantastic new man and you start a relationship with him. Unfortunately, the relationship is not going so well. It's starting to spin its wheels, things are slowing down, it's not making good progress, and you're not feeling good about him. You think that unfortunately the relationship will end soon. Okay. Okay, good. And now can you have a look and see where you are? Okay. Right. Okay. So hands up if you think that you walked less far in the second story there. Yeah? Yeah? Good. Okay. And hands up if you think you actually walked further in the second story. Oh, you're not sure. Okay, the two front. Nice. Okay, do you want to sit down and I'll give you a bit of context for why we did the strange activity like this? This was actually a very non-scientific version of an experimental study that was really carried out and that has been published in the literature, showing that when people are listening to stories about progress through life or progress through a relationship, if there is lots of positive action going on, lots of positive energy, relationship is going well, making good progress, etc., etc., people actually walk further and faster than if they are hearing a story about the relationship not going well and making slow progress, etc. And that's a statistically significant result. Why? Why do you think this is the case? When we are talking about, yes?
Feeling a bit excited?
Yeah, good. So we're a bit excited, we're a bit enervated, we've got a bit of energy. Yes, good. Yeah. Basically, one of the things that this represents is the idea that moving forward through time, so we always talk about moving forward through time, we think about it as in terms of moving forward through space. Yeah? So we look forward to tomorrow, yeah? We look back to last week. We make progress through things. We keep up with the clocks. Time flies, as you said, yeah? And these idioms are not random idioms. They are underpinned by this bodily experience of moving through space. And so this story was by a researcher called Raymond Gibbs, who's done a lot of studies a bit like this, showing that a lot of these kind of like metaphorical ways of thinking about abstract things are in fact very, very embodied and very physical things. There's a kind of bodily thing behind the metaphorical thing, if you like. In a similar kind of study, I would like you to just turn to the person sitting next to you Yeah, I think. And if you divide down here, people on this side of the room, I would all like you to lean forwards into the person sitting next to you and tell them about what you were doing yesterday, okay? And here, I'd like you to all lean forwards and tell them about what you are doing tomorrow, what your plans are for tomorrow. Just for, and if you're on your own, maybe you just kind of listen in, okay? 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 Was that fine? Was that nice and easy? Not too difficult? Nice, easy activity? Okay. And hopefully, if nothing else, now you at least know the person next to you a bit better than you did before. Okay. Now, I'm sure that this study would not work out properly in an experimental laboratory, but it's a kind of indication of this finding here. That it's been found that if people are leaning forward, it's actually easier for them to talk about the future and think about the future. If people are leaning backwards, they find it easier to talk about the past. These are strange studies, but interesting studies. And so again, this idea of the future is in front and the past is behind. Did anyone have any difficulties or did you find it particularly difficult or easy to talk about? No, I didn't think, because we're not in a laboratory here, so we're not in a very good controlled study here. But these are kind of these interesting studies. There are hundreds of studies like this showing the link between language and the body. I've got a student, a PhD student, who did a really interesting study where she looked at trying to apply this idea to the language classroom. And what Rawan, she's from Saudi Arabia, she was looking at how to teach idioms using we call it an embodied metaphor. It's a metaphor, so a big kind of metaphorical way of thinking. So not like an expression, but a metaphorical way of thinking in that kind of like the future is in front, yeah? Or the past is behind. Embodied because it's physical. And she was interested in teaching idioms to her Saudi students using this metaphor. She did a really interesting study. She attempted to teach her students, first-year students at a Saudi university, 11 idioms by enacting the metaphor. So you know how we just walked along across the front of the room here? She had her students doing this kind of enactment in the classroom. The underlying metaphor was the journey of life, and she had 3 groups of students. So she had a control group of students, so this is kind of like a non-experimental group, and with these students she taught them idioms to do with life, but just classified semantically, a bit like we often do when we're teaching. Then she had 2 experimental groups. One experimental group, she taught them the underlying metaphor of moving forward through life is a journey, okay? And she was interested to see whether that would help them learn these idioms. And then the final group, the enacted metaphor group, she had them acting out the metaphors. This is the really fun group, I think. And she was interested in looking at whether it helped them remember the idioms later on. So basically, she had, this is the kind of thing that she did with the embodied group. TPR stands for Total Physical Response. Are you familiar with that method as a teaching method? It's a method which involves the whole body in learning, not just the language, not just reading and writing. And so she did this story with them, Sarah's career path, and you can see it contains a number of idioms. So I'd like you to tell you the story of how I became a painter. My parents are both doctors, and they wanted me to become a doctor too. After high school, I started down the path, to earning my medical degree. This wasn't what I wanted, but it felt like I had to follow in my parents' footsteps. So the parents are making the footsteps in the snow, and she's walking in the footsteps. I failed the medical school science placement exam. They told me that I could retake the test in a week. I was at a crossroads then. I could not retake the science exam, or I could listen to my heart and follow my dream to be a painter. So this is an example from the story. Some more idioms at the bottom here that I've not put in blue. And these are the kind of things that she had the students do. So for things like overcoming obstacles or reaching a crossroads, some students would actually have to make an obstacle and the other student would have to step over them as they were saying the expression. So in other words, they were acting out the idioms as they were saying them. Interestingly, what she found, so when she did her tests afterwards, she gave the students a pre-test on the idioms, so she gave them a test of their understanding of the idioms. Then she gave them a post-test, so a test to see whether they understood the idioms after, and then a delayed post-test to see whether they would understand the idioms much later on, yeah? So 3 tests. Interestingly, these are the 3 groups, and you'll notice the pre-test, everybody's about the same with their knowledge of the idioms, as you'd expect. With the post-test, both the metaphor groups are much better at remembering the idioms, yeah? Straight afterwards. Interestingly, at the longer post-test, so several weeks later, you notice the embodied or enacted metaphor group, the ones who've done the acting, remembered them much, much longer. And this shows that kind of if students learn with their bodies, they help to learn, and it helps retention. Now this is, so far it's a very simple thing. So we've seen here that we've talked about this one underlying idea that time in the future is in front of us. And we have expressions like looking forward to seeing you, or looking ahead to this evening, thinking back to last week. So far so good, nice and simple, yeah? What about this? And those of you who were here at my other talk last week will remember this expression. So, next Wednesday's meeting has been moved forward by 2 days. So, is that meeting, hands up who thinks that meeting is now going to be on Friday? Yeah, okay, so 4 people, okay. Hands up who thinks it's going to be on Monday? Okay, again, 4 or 5 people. And everybody else, not sure, yeah? Okay, so you put your hand up for Friday. Why is it on Friday? Yeah. Good, and it's in the gesture, yeah. It's moved forward by 2 days, yes? So why Monday? Good, yeah, moving up the actual date. Well, actually, this is a really interesting phenomenon in English. Both of these are correct. English is a very confusing language, and people are obviously missing meetings with each other all the time because some people think it's Friday and some people think it's Monday. And the reason for that is we talked about moving through time as moving through space. That's one way in which the relationship between time and space works in English and in other languages. It also works in another way. So we have this idea that we are moving through time. This is it's called the moving ego. So the ego is the person, like the moving ego perspective. And this would be, the meeting is going to be on Friday, yes? But we also have this idiom, or this way of thinking about time and space in English, where we are here and time is washing over us, yeah? Time is coming towards us. So Christmas is approaching, yeah? Christmas is coming up quickly, yes? The meeting is looming and arriving soon, yes? And so this is the moving time idea. So we are still and time is moving. So these are 2 ways in which we see the relationship between time and space in English. And they both underlie different kinds of idiomatic expressions. But there are other ways of seeing time in English. Time can also go round in a circle, and we can be outside time, yeah? So time is carrying on going round, the days, the cyclical years, the weeks turn into months, the months turn into years, and here I am outside time watching time. So So that's another thing that we can do with time. It's really interesting when we start to think about time. We all become like physicists and time does strange things. So I'm going to look at a few idioms involving time. Yeah, so here's the moving time versus moving ego. That's what I said. Going to look at a few idioms involving time and just let's think about what is happening with time in these idioms. So let's beat the clock. What's happening here, do you think? First of all, what does let's beat the clock mean?
Be quick.
Yeah, be quick. Yeah, be really, really quick. And do it before the time which, yeah. So we're supposed to finish the test at 2 o'clock and we're going to finish it by 1:45. Let's beat the clock. So what's the relationship there? What's time doing, do you think? Yeah, it's almost like we are racing against time, isn't it? Yeah. So
If you don't cherish it.
good, yeah. So that's another way, an important way of thinking about time, is that we mustn't waste time. Time is money, yeah. So time is a resource, which is another way of thinking about time. So time is money. We mustn't waste time. We mustn't throw away time. Yeah, let's beat the clock. This idea that time is moving along and we're running alongside it. So it's another kind of way of thinking about time. What about we're behind the times? If somebody says, oh, we're behind the times. Not exactly late. Old-fashioned, yeah. Yesterday's man, yeah. I'm yesterday's woman, oh dear. Behind the times. So here, the times, like the way people think about things, have moved and we are stuck, yeah? So all of these we can think about in terms of kind of like an image of what's happening between us and our relationship with time. Put it behind you. When would somebody say, put it behind you? So imagine that something really, really embarrassing happened, like I was busy teaching this class and I spilt water all over me and then all my clothes fell off and I fell on the floor and afterwards my friend is saying, don't worry, Jeanette, put it behind you. It means try and forget about it, yeah? So try not, the horrible thing happened, put it behind you and move on. Often those expressions go together. Put it behind you and move on. So again, you've got this idea of time as a kind of timeline, and you can put an object behind you and you are moving on. We are ahead of time. It's not related to behind the times. It's a bit confusing here. We're ahead of time means we're early, yeah. So this one actually does draw, it shows how at first it looked nice and simple. Time is moving through this, but actually it's really complicated because ahead of time here means that we're actually early. So this is the kind of like the moving time perspective, yeah. Time flies. We were talking about time flies before, yeah. What does this mean? Yes?
It goes away. Time goes away very quickly.
Brilliant, yeah, good. So time goes really, really quickly. It flies and then we can't keep up with it. So again, time is moving time now rather than moving ego. When time passes quickly. So time passes quickly, it means that there's no time left, yeah? So time is moving. Christmas is approaching fast. That's the one we talked about. That's the moving time one. And in your own time. What does in your own time mean?
When you're ready.
Yeah, when you're ready, yes. Yeah. It sometimes has a slightly sarcastic or ironic thing. If people are taking too much time, you might say, in your own time, yeah. So here it's kind of like, here's everybody else's time, and here is your time. That's a bit different from everybody else's. Looking at these, would you say that all of these are idioms? Clearly idioms, some less idiomatic than others?
I'm not sure about the approaching one.
Yeah, Christmas is approaching fast. That just sounds like something that we say, yes. Or what about when time passes quickly?
Not an idiom
Yeah.
maybe to others.
Well, I think this is an important thing. I've put an important thing to bear in mind in English. Sometimes we think that there is language and there is idioms and that they are two different things. In fact, it's not really the case. Idioms are kind of like a part of language and they reflect these underlying metaphorical ways of thinking, but they shade gradually from sort of pure non-idiomatic language to like pure idiomatic language. It's more appropriate to see it as a kind of cline with these expressions. Some of them are not necessarily idioms. So sometimes it's good to think of idioms as a kind of like a part of language, a natural way of expressing things. Yeah. Okay. So that's time-related idioms and the body. This is time. Now we're going to move now to a different way, a different metaphor that underpins some idiomatic expressions. And I'm going to show you some words, and I just want you to tell me, when you see them, is it a word in English or is it not a word in English? So, is this a word in English? Yes.
Yes. No.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yes.
Good. Okay. Right. Good. Well done. Yeah. So, why do you think I was giving you this? Any ideas? Did you look at where they were on the board? Yeah? Some were high and some were low. Yes? There's been an interesting study that has shown that when the positive words appear at the top of the screen, people are quicker to recognise them as a word than when they appear at the bottom of the screen. When bad words appear at the bottom of the screen, people are quicker to recognise them than when they appear at the top of the screen. Why is that? Strange, yeah?
I guess it's also to do with dimension. It's like if we're saying like uplifting, then it's happy, and we're saying we're down, then it's
Fantastic, good, that's exactly spot on, yeah. So we have this idea of uplifting and feeling down. We have it in the language a lot, and that reflects an underlying idea that good things tend to be up and bad things tend to be down, yeah? People who are religious, heaven is up and hell is down, for example, yeah? But all sorts of other things as well. We are feeling low, or we are feeling on top of the world, yeah? So again, it's another motivating. The idea here is that these expressions are, we call it motivated. It means there's a kind of like a reason why we have these expressions. So idioms, I was talking before to somebody about how difficult it is to teach idioms and how sometimes it's difficult to teach why they mean certain things. But there have been a lot of studies recently showing that if we think about what is motivating the idioms, they're much easier to learn and much easier to remember. And so this is the study. So people recognise positive words faster if they're in a higher vertical position, and they recognise negative words faster if they appear in the lower part of the screen. So that's like positive and negative words. What about these pictures here? So I'm going to show you a few slides full of pictures, and I'm just going to ask you to try and remember the pictures that I've shown you. Okay? Okay? So, which ones do you remember? Do you remember anything?
Party.
The party, the cat, the funeral. The party, the cat, the funeral. Okay? And the puppy. Okay. So there's other things that are going to be interfering with my experiment here, like the fact we like looking at puppies and cats and things like that. But again, this is another study that showed that people are more likely to remember positive images if they're at the top of the screen, and they're more likely to remember negative images if they're at the bottom of the screen. Let's see if that's true. So the funeral, yes, it was at the bottom of the screen. Which party was it you remembered? The bottom one. Never mind. The study's not working. None of those. Nobody remembered those. Nobody said anything about those. The puppy. Again at the top. Well, maybe there's an interaction there between the fact that it's a puppy and that's nice. Yeah. And the cat. Do you remember a cat? I'm not sure about the cat. Oh, the cat. Oh, but it's a sad cat. Yeah. So I think that when people do these experiments, they control the items much more rigorously than we are doing here. But again, it's the same thing, like happy and sad. So good and bad, happy and sad, the same relationship. Now you're probably going to get this experiment worked out. You're probably going to do this perfectly now that we've been working on this. But we'll try it anyway. I would like everybody this side of the room to look down at the floor, and everybody this side of the room to look up at the ceiling, and to think of a number between 1 and 20. Very quickly, the first number that comes into your head. Okay? Okay, good. So, on this side of the room, what kind of numbers were you coming up with? 17. 16. 12. 4. I don't think this experiment is going to work. And people on this side? 14, 18, 17. 1. Okay. I'm sure this wouldn't work either. But apparently, this has also been shown to be the case, that when people are looking down, they think of lower numbers, apparently. There's been a study showing, actually by a colleague of mine and somebody in the States, apparently in the laboratory, this is what happens. Not in the classroom, not here. Okay.
I think the difference between odd and even numbers.
Odd and even, I think that's, yeah, I think that would be interesting. Maybe we should do another study. Do that, Mike? Yeah. The odd is kind of low and bad, and even is good, and exactly, good. So but allegedly that's the third thing. So we've got kind of good and bad, happy and sad, high and low numbers. And the final thing is hierarchy. So we have things like rising populations, falling prices for the idioms that come from that. Final thing is hierarchy. So which one of these two has power, would you say? The king. Okay, some of you remember this from last week. Okay. No, I'm showing it again. Proud of this. Yeah. I'm not very good at PowerPoint, which is why I'm really proud of this. Okay. Now, which one has power? Okay. Why do we say the servant?
It is on the top.
It's at the top, so we assume now the servant's got power. Yeah. Yeah. That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because, in fact, it's still the king who has power, but we think servant. And again, this is a very interesting study that showed that people take longer to decide that the servant or the king has power when it appears at the bottom of the screen. And they take less time to decide he has power when he's at the top of the screen. Again, and the idea is that these relationships are more than just language. They are embodied physical relationships. They're kind of like, they have a psychological reality for us beyond language. Because a lot of these studies are also not even involving language. So do that one more time. And so here. So people judge the hierarchical status of individuals more rapidly when they're in the congruent position. Congruent means like the powerful thing is at the top and the not powerful thing is at the bottom. When powerful words are presented at the top of the screen and when non-powerful words are at the bottom of the screen. So here's these 4 things. So we've got... So we've got the happiness, and we've got the power, and we've got the number, and we've got the good and bad. And we've got kind of expressions like these underlying, what we call them kind of conceptual metaphor or embodied metaphors. They're not the kind of big metaphors that underlie lots and lots and lots of different expressions. Expressions like this: how are you feeling? On top of the world, yeah? How's your new job? It has its ups and downs, yeah? So these expressions come from that. And so if we look here, we've got just these 3 things. More is up, better is up, powerful is up. If I show you some idioms, can you tell me which of these 3 the idiom corresponds to? So it's beneath me. I wouldn't do that. It's beneath me. Yeah, it's got powerful, but also you've got also an element there of better, because it's such a horrible thing. You know, I wouldn't steal your. Did you steal my lunch? No, I would never steal your lunch. It's beneath me. I would never do that. Yes. So low morality. So sometimes idiomatic expressions are motivated by more than one of these relationships. I think he looks down on me. This is. Yes? I think it's got an element of better. He thinks he's better than me. Good. Yeah. So he thinks he's better than me, but also he thinks he's more powerful. He thinks he's more important. Yeah? He's superior. Prices have shot up. More is up. Yes. Things are looking up. What does that mean? Things are looking up. Things are becoming better and better. Yeah. So better is up. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is true. The pound is down again, and it will continue to go down, I'm sure. So this is this is kind of better and more. Yeah. I need to raise my game. What does that mean? I need to raise my game. It's like up my game. Yes, I need to up my game. I need to improve things. So I got 3 out of 20 again in the exam. I need to raise my game. I need to start working. I need to start doing things. So this will be more, better, powerful, better. I need to improve. Cheer up. That's kind of better, happy, yeah? And then this is quite an interesting one. What will upstairs think? Okay, so you're in an organisation and you're worried about, you know, what's going to happen, and you say, what will upstairs think? What does that mean, do you think? The management, yeah. What will the management think? Yeah. The senior management, yeah. Upstairs. Now, this is quite an interesting one because we talk about upstairs to mean the management. That's very common. Downstairs to mean the workers. Downstairs can be the workers. But if you think about it physically, in life, it's not necessarily always the case that the managers are upstairs and that the workers are downstairs. It's equally possible for the managers to be on the ground floor, in the important offices on the ground floor, and the workers are upstairs. But we never say that. We never say, what will downstairs think? We don't say it. And if you look in like big selections of language corpora, like language, lots and lots of examples, we never talk about downstairs to refer to the management, because in our heads we have the hierarchy of the up is important or up is powerful. So I think it's quite interesting showing that language not just reflects the reality of how things are in the physical world, it reflects how things are in the kind of social world at the same time. We combine the two, and we have this metaphor structuring our ideas. Okay. So a few more things now. I'd like people on this half of the room to touch. You see on the seat there is a kind of like a piece of metal on the front of the armrest. Part of the armrest at the front. Yes, yes, here. This bit here. So just on your own armrest here. Yeah, that's it. So you're touching the bit of metal, okay? And here, on this side, I would like you to touch your stomachs, okay? Right. Now, this is a really stupid experiment. There is no way this is going to work in a million years, but we'll try it anyway, okay? Now, I want you to look at this man, and I want you to think, does he look friendly or not? Okay? So, no, not friendly. Not a friendly man, okay? Friendly man? Yes? Oh my God. No, not friendly. Oh, yes, working here. Okay. Okay. This is another very interesting study. This is a very odd study. In this study, what happened was before participants were invited into the laboratory, they were given a drink just in the lift on the way up. And some of the participants were given a hot cup of coffee, and other people were given a cold, freezing cold glass of iced water. And then in the lab, they were asked to judge the friendliness of people. And these people found that when people are holding a warm drink, they were more likely to judge people as friendly than when they were holding a cold drink, which again, yeah, strange studies. Most of them done in California, as you can imagine, like American style. Yeah. But again, this is kind of like underlying this idea that warmth is friendliness is warmth, yeah, and closeness is warmth. Okay, and another similar type of thing. So here we go. Goldie is a very warm and honest person, as an example. Another kind of relationship is to do with texture. So here we have like a very rough surface, and here we have somebody going into an MRI scanner. Yeah, this is going to look at what's happening in their brain. Okay. In the study that I'm going to introduce now, people were in the MRI scanner and they read sentences like Sam had a bad day and Sam had a rough day. Both meaning the same kind of thing, but what they found was that when the people read things like Sam had a rough day, and they pressed a response button as soon as they'd understood the statement, it activated sensory areas of the brain that are related to physical experiences that would be actually activated if people were feeling a rough surface. So even reading a word such as rough, in order to understand it in its metaphorical context, so not in a literal context, but in a metaphorical context, it still activates the parts of the brain that are activated when you're feeling something rough. And this is interesting because this is why metaphor works, why it's so powerful, why idioms are so powerful, why they're stronger than just using kind of ordinary language, why it's kind of good to learn them, because they're more persuasive. If you're trying to persuade somebody of something and you use language that makes them have a kind of a physical experience in their brain, it's more persuasive than if you just use an ordinary word like bad or good. So this is interesting. So rough, things like words like rough trigger these kinds of reactions. Similarly, this is Wilson and Gibbs found that phrases like idioms like grasp the concept. If people are first asked to make a grasping motion, they understand them more quickly than if they're not making that motion. So again, bodily action is influencing the idioms. What's to grasp the concept? To understand it really thoroughly, really grasp it. And often if you watch people's gestures that they are using when they talk, often they will say, really grasp the concept, yes? Yeah? Or what is it Donald Trump does, the kind of like, yeah, exactly, little detail, yeah. Let's not think about what he's thinking about, yeah, yeah. It's interesting to watch because that's evidence of this kind of metaphorical thinking or the idiomatic thinking going on behind the scenes or under the surface. In another study, this is one I mentioned last week. This is a fun study. So in this study, people were in a room and they were asked to think about either a very moral deed, something very moral that they were aware of, or something immoral, so something really wrong and naughty and bad. And then as they left the room, they were offered a free gift, a kind of thank you for participating in our study. And they said you can either have like some chocolate or something nice, or you can have some antiseptic wipes. Interestingly, the people who have been thinking about the immoral deeds chose the antiseptic wipes, or were more likely to choose the antiseptic wipes, because this idea of morality is cleanliness and immorality is dirtiness. So again, this idea is also embodied. It's not just a kind of like in the language, it's also in the body. They want to clean off the immoral deed with the wipes. Yeah. And so here we are. Asking people to recall an immoral deed as opposed to an ethical one made them more likely to choose an antiseptic wipe as a free gift after the experiment. Okay. And here, this is another one as well about people working in clean offices versus dirty offices. So this is a kind of like, again, this idea of morality is cleanliness. If people are in a kind of like put in a dirty environment, they're more likely to judge people's behaviour as immoral than if they're sitting in a clean environment. So we need to keep our houses and environments and our offices nice and clean so that people think we're more moral. Yes, okay. Wear lots of white things, yeah. So this is interesting, yeah. So it shows that again, this clean and dirty also interacts with the language. And that's a kind of idiom that goes with that. And a dirty business it was too. And this is the strangest study of all. This is a really strange study. This is a study where participants were invited into a room, and in the room they were told about a kind of like an investment plan, an investment opportunity, which sounded a bit dodgy, a little bit strange. For some of the participants, they walked into the room and there was like no smell, like a normal room. For other students, somebody had sprayed a smell to make it smell like fish. And for other participants, somebody had sprayed the room to make it smell like farts, which is horrible. I would not like to be in this experiment. Yeah. And they found, this is a really strange study, the people who have been, so this is what happened. So the people went into the room and these various smells that were in the room. And they found that people who were in the fishy room were less likely to invest. This is a strange study, this. I think this is a really odd one because there's this expression, something is fishy. There's a fishy smell. I don't trust it. Of all the studies, this is the one that I think is a bit strange. The other ones I can see, I get that. But this is only based on one idiom, so I think it's a bit odd. But still, they got the result. They said that, yeah? So there's the fishy thing about the scheme. So what we've got here, we've had these lots and lots of experiments looking at these things motivating idioms, physical texture, heat, and physical actions. So if I show you some idioms, can you see which one of those they correspond to, more or less? So here we've got the warm-up man. I think this is sometimes like the role when someone is coming on to speak or to do a comedy show, somebody comes on first to get the audience all excited and keen and enthusiastic, yes? So this would be heat, obviously, yes. I let it slip between my fingers. So what does this mean? I let it slip between my fingers. Yeah, I missed the opportunity. I had an opportunity and it slipped between my fingers. Again, a very physical thing. Okay. So here, probably physical action. Yeah. Stop clutching at straws. So, what does this mean? If you say stop clutching at straws. Yeah. Yes. You know, it's kind of pointless. Like you're trying to grab all these straws. And they're all disappearing. I don't know where they're going, all these straws, but you're kind of trying to grab one, and they're all going away. And it's pointless. There's no point in doing it. Yeah. So physical actions. He's as hard as nails. If someone's as hard as nails, it means he's stubborn and uncompromising, strong, but not in a good way. Yeah. He's not a nice person. Yeah. So here you'd have the texture. Yeah. Relations have thawed between China and Japan. So if they've thawed, it means that they have unfrozen, yeah. So we're speaking about idioms in idioms. So yeah, so things have got better, yeah. And so here we've got the heat. And the final one, can I grab your attention for a minute? Can I grab your attention? Can I have your attention? Yeah. So here, and this is again, it's related to physical actions. So I think that looking at the study that my student made of Rawan's study, where she showed that getting the students to act out the idioms, and also looking at all of these other studies showing that these are things that kind of there are embodied metaphors underlying them, it perhaps suggests that it's worth drawing attention to the original meaning of these idioms to try and kind of get to try and help us remember them. And so here we have like a sort of a discussion question in a way. So we've got all these various studies. Can I ask you just to sort of think with the person next to you, just for a minute before we end, what applications this might have to language teaching, or what kind of implications would it have for the way you go about learning a language or teaching a language. Is any of this useful, or some of it not so useful? Are we going to be spraying the classroom with a fish smell when we teach fishy? Or is that too strong? Or are there more kind of practical, realistic things that we can do in a class with our students? So you just want to have a chat with the person next to you just for 1 minute, and then we'll share some ideas as a room as a whole. Okay. Okay, so does anyone have any thoughts that they would like to share with the group on this?
And I'm a teacher of English, and I tend to put idioms into like groups, like give it a theme, for example, family.
Yes.
And I'll give them idioms about family, like blood is thicker than water, things like that.
Good.
So
yes.
they can really experience it and also visualize it, like what you said.
Yeah.
When they have a vicarious feeling of that one, then they can really experience it and they will understand it better. So I go for the other point you mentioned about the getting them to touch it or to
Yes.
experience it.
That's really, yeah, good. And you group them according to kind of the topic that they would be used to talk about. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts on any of it? Did it occur to you that some of these approaches might be better than others, that some idioms might be easier than others to teach with this? Yeah, you're going to say something?
I'm thinking, well, just now you mentioned about an idiom about I smell something fishy.
Yes.
Right? If I explain to the student, okay, if you smell something fishy, that means there's something it may not go right. But then my student would ask, if I smell something fart,
Yeah.
it doesn't go right as well. So, and then at last I would just ask him or her to, oh, you just remembered.
Yeah, I think that you're right, because I think some of these, like kind of like something feeling rough or up and down or moving forward in time, those are really clearly motivated. And that's why I put the fishy one in, because the fishy one, it's not clear at all what's going on. And often that people like fish, so it's not a bad thing. And like you, has a good point. I smell something fart is actually worse. Yeah. So I think that, as with all things, an approach to teaching idioms that invigorates their underlying meaning is good up to a point, and then you have other idioms where they just have to remember it. Yeah, exactly. And they have to find other ways of remembering it. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts?